Great. So hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining the Montgomery County Taxpayers League this evening for our meeting with Councilwoman Balcombe, who is a member of the Economic Development Committee and the Transportation and Environment Committee. My name is Esther Weld, and I'm the president of the Montgomery County Taxpayers League. Also joining us is Gordon Brenny, our treasurer, Fitzgerald Mofor, our secretary, and our board members are Ann Hingston, Joan Fiddler, and Lee Henry. So in order to get in contact with us at the Montgomery County Taxpayers League, you can reach out to us through Facebook on our social media, MCTL, or on X at MoCo Taxpayers. You can also visit our website at www.mctaxpayersleague.org, or you can reach out to me directly, presidentmctl@gmail.com. The objective of the Montgomery County Taxpayers League is to educate and advocate for county taxpayers. We support appropriate actions to achieve greater efficiency and effectiveness in Montgomery County government and tax equity for Montgomery County taxpayers. Our vision is focused on performance and outcomes. We host presentations like this with local elected and appointed officials on topics which have an impact on the county's finances and consequently our taxes. We also take part in various public meetings and other advocacy. Upcoming events, please mark your calendar. Tentatively, we will be having our second MCPS FY 2026 Operating Budget Palooza. It was a hit this year, brought really great value to the community. So we're going to run it back one more time for the upcoming budget that Superintendent Taylor will release here this month, later this month. And so in February 2025, we will have this Budget Palooza. As you know, MCPS budget is half of our county budget. We are expecting it's going to be over $3.3 billion. So please get engaged and join us in February for our Budget Palooza. Internally, we have open leadership positions and volunteer opportunities. So again, reach out to us at presidentmctl@gmail.com. And also reach out to us if you are aware of community events or engagement opportunities for MCTL to attend and advocate for members and taxpayers. It's membership drive time, so we are soliciting our annual membership of $25 for your dues donations. Thank you in advance for your participation and engagement with the Taxpayers League. And also, we would like you to join us just for our monthly meetings, which will start back up in January of this year. So without further ado, I want to introduce you to Marilyn Balcombe, our Councilwoman of District 2 Up County. So Councilmember Marilyn Balcombe is a strong advocate for her community, having lived in the Up County for nearly 30 years. Marilyn is not afraid to roll up her sleeves and do the hard work of community building. Prior to joining the County Council, Marilyn was the president and CEO of the Gaithersburg-Germantown Chamber of Commerce. As the CEO of the Chamber, Marilyn was actively involved in land use planning, transportation, and economic development. She has worked with thousands of businesses, large and small, to help create a vibrant local economy. On the council, her focus will remain to strengthen the county's business climate and bring jobs to the Up County. Marilyn has been a strong voice for transportation and was a major advocate for building the Watkinsville interchange and remains committed to increasing capacity on the MARC rail system. Marilyn is well known for her contributions to our community. She is a graduate of Leadership Montgomery and co-chaired the Great Seneca Science Corridor Master Plan Implementation Committee. She was most recently on the board of FutureLink and continues to be a mentor for students transitioning to Montgomery College. Marilyn is a past chair of the Committee for Montgomery and a prior member of the leadership group of Montgomery Moving Forward, focusing on the important issue of early care and education in Montgomery County. Marilyn was also on the Complete Count Committee for the 2020 census, where she was the lead liaison for Germantown, as well as the Up County Vaccination Outreach Committee. Prior to being at the Chamber, Marilyn was with the Blackrock Center for the Arts in Germantown as the executive director during the construction in the first year of operations. Marilyn was also a primary driver in the completion of the Germantown Library and the Germantown Town Center Park. She was also on staff at the Up County Regional Services Center as the community outreach coordinator for the Germantown community. Prior to her work in the community, Dr. Balcombe was an organizational psychologist with the U.S. Department of Energy. Her primary focus was the well-being of the contractor workforce and worked with psychologists across the country on issues such as substance abuse, mental wellness, and the safety and security of our federal facilities. In addition to her work in the United States, she worked in England at a newly opened medical school at the University of York, developing their organizational infrastructure. Marilyn holds a PhD in organizational psychology from the University of Tennessee, Knoxville, a master's degree in mental health counseling from the University of Florida, and a bachelor's degree in accounting, also from the University of Florida. She's a longtime resident of Germantown. Her daughter, Emily, is a proud graduate of MCPS Northwest High School. Go Jags. So welcome, Councilwoman Balcombe. Thank you for joining us this evening to discuss the county's Economic Development Committee work and Transportation and Environment Committee work. We hope this meeting is the first of many conversations and engagements.
Okay.
Yeah, so thank you so much for joining. And maybe we want to kick it off if you would like to discuss some of the work that you're doing on both your committees, and maybe you guys had a meeting yesterday and you had your full council meeting today. So just kind of update members in the community on all the great things that's going on the council.
Okay. So, and I'll try to manage my time so I don't hog all the time with just this first thing. Transportation and environment and econ. So transportation and environment, we have really been focusing on environment here in the past 6 months or so. The heavy lifting is the Building Energy Performance Standards, otherwise known as BEPS. The focus is to get all buildings, up to speed in terms of energy efficiency to meet our climate action goals. And the law was passed a couple years ago, and these are the regs. And so they're very complex and they affect, most buildings. And so what we did in the T&E committee is to hear from different sectors about how the regulations would impact different sectors. So we heard from hospitals, we heard from biotech, life sciences centers, we heard from apartments, condo associations, and hospitals. Where I'm missing a couple. We heard from faith-based groups. We also heard from funding sources, primarily the Green Bank, the Department of Energy, because it's going to be a very costly endeavor, and so we have funding available through the Green Bank, and we're trying to bolster that. So where we are now is we had 7 sessions, and we had, of course, public hearings, and so we're now just kind of taking in all of the comments and working with, as the Department of Environmental Protection has done too. So we will start looking at potential amendments to the regulations. And see if some of the changes may have to do with the code or regulations. We'll have to work that out. We'll be getting back to this in January and hopefully be done before budget. But it's a short window and a very, very complicated task. So that's the BEPS regulations. Another regulation that came to us in February was the Transportation Demand Management regs. Also very complicated, and I had a lot of concerns with those regs and submitted pages of amendments. The committee decided to put it on hold until after the growth and infrastructure policy, just because there were so many potential amendments. But I have concerns. Not only do I have concerns with the regs, I have concerns with the code. So I'm looking to introduce a bill to change that law, and it's transportation demand management, which requires employers, and the new addition is new buildings to um, submit transportation transit plans and to reduce the auto driver mode share. And so I'm working on that. That's a big project that hopefully we'll see uh, very soon in the new year. Um, so we also had WSSC in. We had a long discussion about the WSSC rates. We did not come, this is a bi-county agency. We did not we did not come to agreement with Prince George's. We came in at 10.2%. Prince George's came in at 9%. And so we will wait to see how WSSC responds in the budget that they give us. And Prince George's, this has happened before, so it's not uncharted territory. I'm happy to explain why I went with the 10.2. Um, uh, we have an aging system, and we continually underfund them. Um, and then so those are so that's transportation environment. Transportation, we spent a lot of time last year on the Safe Streets Act and pedestrian safety and safe routes to schools. We continue to monitor that. Um, and we had a lot of activity last year. This year, just we've been spending on transportation. Not in committee yet, but I'm spending a lot of time on is, and it all happens to be in my district, impacting the entire county, and that's the waste treatment. So the extension of the incinerator contract was just announced this week. And there's a big push to close the incinerator. That's not going to happen by 2026. So there's a 5-year extension to go to 2031. And so that's just such a massive undertaking. One of the problems with closing the incinerator right now is what would we do with our waste? And there are limited options. Uh, However, we do know that we need to reduce uh, compostables, organic matter in the waste stream. So we need to look at building a large industrial composting facility. We funded it last year, and we're negotiating the site right now of where that would be. It'll be in my district. So that's then taking up a lot of time and energy. And then the other energy related issue in the ag reserve is solar farms. And we have several applications in right now that do not meet the county's zoning code, but the county does not have jurisdiction. The state has jurisdiction to approve the plans. The county has asked that our zoning be upheld, and the primary difference between the two is how we treat our soils. The county, the county regs don't allow solar on type 1, type 2 soil, and the state does. So stay tuned on that one. That's a big. Economic development, we just yesterday or last week It might have been, no, it might have been yesterday, right? Getting my committees mixed up. We did pass the regs for the new building code and fire code for new buildings. There weren't any big changes. They started to introduce code for to become electric ready. But these were new building codes. Most new buildings exceed the environmental codes. It's really which is not the case with existing buildings. So what we did yesterday only impacted new buildings. Office vacancy, we have spent a lot of time on office vacancy. And we're continuing to look at office vacancy. We're at about 20% vacancy, which many people say is a false. It's a false number in that the usage rate is much higher than 20%, meaning the usage is lower than 80%. So the vacancy rate only counts lease current leases. We know anecdotally that when new leases come up, companies are taking way less space. So we know that there is a cliff out there, and that's 2 to 3 to 4 years coming. Had discussion about converting office to residential. It's not easy and it's not cheap, and so it can happen, but that's not the panacea for our office vacancy. And we need businesses. So the other thing that I'm working on is workforce development in the trades. I would like to see a lot more certificate ready certification programs. MCPS, Montgomery College, and universities at Shady Grove all have really good programs. I would like to see more integration, between the three, particularly with MCPS. And then of course we have two new incentive programs. The MOVE grant, which was an existing grant, but we extended it to expansions. That was the biggest change. And the jobs grant, which provides incentives for jobs, high-paying jobs. So those are the two committees. I would expect that in the coming year, we're going to really look at BEPS. We're going to look at the transportation demand management. And then in ECON, we do have a workforce development session coming up, focusing on certification programs and the tech sector. We talk a lot about biotech and life sciences, but there is a growing tech sector that we should pay attention to. So I see that happening, and then office vacancy, so those are my committees.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that overview. Very thorough and lots of good work happening. And for participants, if you have a question for Councilwoman Balcombe, please raise your virtual hand. And I'm happy to alternate between the attendees and our pre-submitted questions to our Councilwoman. And so with that, maybe kind of keep that momentum going. Councilwoman Balcombe, legislative items. So the General Assembly, they're going to be in session in here in a little over a month. Can you please talk about any 2025 state legislation or bills that your committees are interested or tracking for the upcoming year?
Yeah, so we have only been briefed on the local bills so far. So during the session, we meet with our legislative team. We share legislative staff with the county executive, and ideally, we agree. The council and the county executive agrees on bills. Sometimes we don't, but for the most part, we do. Um, so, um, and also we don't, not only haven't been briefed, but a lot of bills, we don't see the bills this early yet. We might hear of a bill, but it's not drafted, so I'll stay focused on the local bills. Some of them that I'm interested in some of them just because I'm interested in them. The ones the committee's looking at um, is the speed monitoring on high-risk highways. It's Bill 1725. It gives local authority to put speed cameras, speed monitoring on high-risk highways. One of the great frustrations, and that with safety, transportation, road safety, pedestrian safety, school safety, is that the county just doesn't have control over state roads. And I have 5 high schools in my district. 4 of them are on state roads. One of them is on 2 state roads. So it's really, actually, 2 of them are on 2 state roads. Um, so it's really frustrating. The Safe Streets Act only is applies to county roads. So we've asked for that change to especially around school zones. The Safe Streets Act, what that does is if there is a collision um, near a school um, at any time, if there's a collision, the county has to review the site to see if infrastructure contributed to the collision. So that means is the crosswalk in the wrong place? Is the crosswalk too far back, too far up? Does there need to be a light? Does there need to be what needs to happen from an infrastructure perspective? Um, but it only matters for county roads. Um, so this bill, the 1725, gives us the jurisdiction to put speed cameras on high-risk highways, and there's a definition of high-risk highways. And that has a significant number of um, representatives, delegates on there. So let's hope that one happens. Stop sign monitoring systems, giving us the authorization for stop sign monitoring. So technology is really changing, and we just passed a bill about noise cameras, and there's a lot of technology out there that we're getting briefed on. And one of those is looking at stop signs. And again, this would be that monitor running of stop signs or being in the crosswalks, those kinds of things. So this is authorization legislation. We don't have the authority to do that right now. And the Julie Polakovich Carr shepherded the noise camera legislation. So I'm hoping that goes through. So those are 2 local bills that I'm looking at from a committee perspective. From a personal perspective, the ranked choice voting is something that I would support. So I'm interested in following that discussion. There's another bill that we weren't briefed on from the council, but I know it's out there from a delegate's perspective, and it's 1525, I think, and it's looking at an economic development study for Upper Western Montgomery County. And so the Poolsville ag area And of course, I support that if that comes through. So those are some of the things that I'm looking at. I'm also interested to see what happens with um, the cell phone the cell phones in classrooms, and whether that can actually happen. Um, I had the advantage of my daughter. I think cell phones just came out when my daughter was in high school, so we didn't have that. I didn't have to deal with that as a parent. But I'm interested in following that just from a personal perspective. And we haven't taken, the council hasn't taken any uh, action on any of these. We've just been briefed on them. And we've shared some thoughts. So that's kind of where we are right now.
Yeah. And one question that came to mind, and probably the biggest bill that I'm looking forward to is special elections. So this
Hmm.
2024 year, I think it was Senator Kagan and Delegate Foley had introduced a special elections bill. What are your thoughts there? I think it's gonna.
I don't think that bubbled up to my brain.
Okay.
What's the no, is there a number? Has it been,
There is, I don't have it offhand, but basically it's because currently
is it a local bill or
I
a,
I think they want to make it a local bill because it's faster.
sure.
Right. And then the other one I wanted to look at was the voting at the Board of Education, where the district seats are voted on by the entire county. And I think that might
Yeah.
be a local bill as well.
Yeah. So, I don't know if you and I have talked about that. So the, I agree with the Board of Education. I think it's extremely difficult.
Right.
I've run an at-large race before, and it's really difficult to do. And I've run a district race before, and and it's better, right? And then also, you create a during when you're running for office, you create relationships with the district, and those people remember what you've said and hold you accountable, right? So I do think that I would support districts for Board of Education. I don't know how they do it.
Right.
I
And their
think
budgets are so
yeah, it's
expensive.
just it's an odd thing. So I would support that. Special elections. Um, so I think that there has to be a way to provide the voters more input in our in these appointments, and I thought about it. I don't know why I thought about maybe when I was looking at the prepping for this. Um, so it would be easy to do a special election. Not easy. It's never easy, and it costs money, right? Um, but it typically happens the first year of a Democratic governor, when the governor changes, when new people come in. I mean, that's typically what happens. I mean, that's the time when it happens the most. But all those decisions aren't made at the same time. So um, you, we would have to figure out when a special election would happen. But I do think that, I mean, I understand where we are right now, and the significant number of people who weren't elected. And so I would certainly look at the bill.
Yeah, awesome. Well, thank you for that. And definitely raise your hand if you're in the chat or you want to contribute. But yeah, I'm right along there with you, Councilwoman. So then sticking with economic development, How can strategies and incentives be improved to accelerate commercial economic development? Can you talk about the role of the Montgomery County Economic Development Corporation and whether its stated mission and vision is translating to real improvements from the investment that taxpayers are making in budgetary funding? Are we adequately funding their budget requests? What changes, if any, do we need to see in order to grow our private sector?
If I could answer that question, that would be, I would be the hero. So I think that from the perspective of accelerating commercial development, economic development, I think that the jobs program providing serious money to companies to come. Now, there's debates about whether incentive, because we do have an economic incentive fund. And there's debates about whether that is a deciding factor. Is it icing on the cake? Are we giving money away? Um, every deal is different. Every single deal is different. From the Economic Development Fund. Those are big deals. We get Marriott, for instance, or AstraZeneca.
Sodexo was one.
Sodexo, keeping
Choice.
Sodexo in the county.
Choice
Um,
Hotel.
so and others, right? Um, the jobs grant is a little different than that. The jobs grant is really focused on giving money to increase the number of jobs. The moves grant, the moves grant targets smaller companies that need money to get in there to expand their lease, that type of thing. So we do have incentives. We do have a pretty good toolbox for incentives. The question of, you know, the Montgomery County Economic Development Corporation and what their role is. I mean, they are our marketing arm. They do attraction and retention of large businesses. And large is a quantitative word. But the issue is that, are we getting are we getting our money's worth with them? Of course we are, because if we didn't have them, we wouldn't be getting any of these deals. And if we go historically, Montgomery County didn't have to do marketing. We were Montgomery County. We were and still are to some extent a company town. We have high paying jobs through the federal government. If we look at all of the federal government, we have probably the two of the highest compensated departments with NIH and FDA. That also fuels our ecosystem for our life sciences center. But the percentage of workforce that is government, federal workforce, has shrunk through the years, and which means that we need to ramp up this marketing effort. I sit on MCDC's board. I certainly support their mission. I do think that they do a good job. Could they do better? Of course. The question of, are we adequately funding this initiative? We cut their budget last year. I don't think we should have done that. Not only do they need the funding, but it's a signal we sent a signal. And so I don't know if we're going to be able to restore those funds this year. Um, Rumor has it it's going to be a tough year. We don't know that we haven't seen any numbers yet. So yes, we need to do that. I think that last year, um, it the debate was muddied by there was a question of kind of let's take money away from MCDC and fund the not incinerators, the incubators. Um, that was a false choice. That was a false choice, and it didn't work because we didn't fund either one, and that was a mistake. And we should be funding both. We did in the Economic Development Committee, we did this really fantastic tour of incubators in Frederick, in Baltimore, and then, of course, in Montgomery County. And there's a stark difference in what we provide our incubator companies, not in terms of the space, but the programming. Frederick, and we went to 3 places in Baltimore, and they're just light years ahead of us. So I would like to see us invest in the incubator system. So this is a budget question, and we need to look at it hard. The other thing I did want to say about the environment, economic development environment, is that I've heard this I've been in this arena for 20 years or so, and for most of that time, permitting has been a significant roadblock. But they have really changed their strategy and the way that they interface with the development community. And it's not new anymore. The director has really committed to that. So I think that's been great. We still want to hear we still hear stories, and they are resolved much quicker than they have been in the past, much quicker. And then the other thing that the county executive did is he created a business center in his administration for small businesses. Someone, an ombudsman or a liaison, and that I am a huge fan of that office. It's not really an office. It's not an office. It's not a department. It's a center. But the people who are doing this work are excellent, and I refer businesses to them all the time. And so I think that those two changes have been really fantastic. So.
Nice. Thank you for that. And again, if you have any questions in the chat, please raise your hand. Happy to call on you. And so switching to environmental regulations, would you support changes to water quality protection charge to better tie costs to benefits? Maybe talk about the purpose of these charges on our bill.
Yeah, so there's I guess there's a technical definition of a tax and a fee, and whether that has to do with what our authority is. So m taxpayer residents don't care what it's called. It adds money, right? We just had this discussion when we talked about impact taxes and impact fees. So I understand that regardless of what it's called, people don't want to pay for it. So So the water protection fee, the water protection charge does fund the clean water initiatives that we have set up stream restoration, monitoring, stormwater management, um, uh, flooding, those kinds of things. And um, it is necessary. Uh, And so if it wasn't, if there wasn't a fee attached, then it would just have to come out of the general fund. And then someone's going to have someone's going to have to pay for it. They are necessary uh, expenses, and we have to pay for them. We had last year, we had a great debate about stream restoration. There's some I guess, disagreement as to whether we should be restoring streams or not. And we got tons, I was going to say a flood of emails, but tons of emails, right? And so we did a field trip. The T&E committee went out and walked through these streams, and we have to invest in stream restoration. So, similar to my discussion about WSSC, um, they, we have to do it. And is there a better way to tie the fee to the benefits? I don't know about that. I'm not really expert on the how the fee is calculated. Has to do with the impervious surface of your property. But someone's going to, it's an expense that we have to have, and someone's going to have to pay for it. I would be open to looking at if there's a better way to tie the cost, the charge to the benefit. But it, if you if we restore a stream in downtown Rockville, which is one of the streams that we looked at, um, that that impacts the entire ecosystem of our water and our streams. And so, if a stream is fixed in Clarksburg, it's not that Clarksburg should pay for that only, right? It's um so
If I could jump in, Gordy here.
hey,
Uh,
Gordy.
yeah, so when it comes to the question of bang for buck, these are taxes to taxpayers. It appears on our property tax bill. But we have not seen any evidence that water pollution has improved. In fact, there is no before and after water pollution test for any of these projects. We
Yeah.
would strongly urge you to see if we can't make that a requirement.
Hmm. That's a really fair point, Gordy. And I would have to go back and look at, the monitoring that's done and will be done. I know that the climate impact plan has a lot of monitoring and metrics in there. That's way further down the road.
This is
So
project by project. A
yeah,
project shouldn't be approved by the EPA unless it has a before measure that we can benchmark, and there should be a required post audit to determine if that project had an impact. If it didn't, we need to readjust how we allocate this money, and
yeah,
perhaps we end up reducing the charge. Perhaps
yeah.
we find there isn't bang for the buck.
Yeah, so appreciate that. There are other factors, and I'm not. You're right about
Oh, this
that.
is a creeping program. There are zillions of factors.
Right, right.
The APA is eating our lunch on this thing.
Okay, but it's not just the pollution of the water. It's habitat, flow, flooding prevention, stormwater management.
Whatever their performance measure is, we want a before and after.
Yeah, yeah. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Okay. And I have Lisa. Lisa's on the call, so I'm sure she's.
Yeah. Thank you so much. But yeah, no, that makes sense. I think with everything, like we said in our mission and our vision, it's always trying to tie the dollars to some type of performance metric that's measurable.
Sure. I appreciate that.
That's a great point. Okay, so then turning to transportation, there's been a lot of meetings happening, a lot of changes being proposed when it comes to transportation in Montgomery County. The one that has been around for some time is the Bus Rapid Transit, or BRT. And so can you talk about, well, what is BRT? Is Bus Rapid Transit cost effective? At what point should ride-on buses be scaled back potentially due to permanent shifts in customer use? And what should the target be for customer fare coverage of operating costs? Because I believe it was during the pandemic, we dropped it to $1 or even free, where prior to the pandemic, it was a couple dollars per trip. So can you kind of talk about sustainability?
Yeah, I mean, that's a lot to talk about, but sure. So, little known fact, I was on the original BRT focus or study group or work group, however long ago that was, 10, 12, 15 years ago. And it was like every other Wednesday night for like a year. So BRT, Bus Rapid Transit, for me, it's not BRT unless it's rapid, and it's not going to be rapid unless there's designated roadway, and less frequent stops. So for me, and we don't have BRT in the Up County. We have one slated for Route 355 from Germantown to Clarksburg. The problem with that route, from my opinion, is that there's no parking. So the stops are much further apart, which is one of the things that makes it rapid. And but there's no parking at the stops. And there's not a lot of density walking distance to 355. So depending on where that is, I don't know how much bang for the buck we're going to have for BRT, which could be why they haven't started with the 355 north. So that's the concept. And the other problem is that having the dedicated roadway, the only way to do that is if the existing roadway isn't constrained, and you can add lanes, but the more constrained the road is, the more necessary it is. So, and if you can build another lane, then chances are it's not as dense, that area. So like traveling through the city of Gaithersburg on 355, there's just no way you're going to add another lane. And can you take an auto lane away? So that's going to be a real decision. They're looking at design right now, and that's going to be really interesting to see what happens there. In terms of, ride-on routes, when we put BRT in place, what does that do to ride-on? That calculation's made all the time. So we just added 2 routes in the life sciences corridor, and they will be monitoring the existing ride-on routes to see what changes should be made. And shifts happen all the time. I mean, we just had an announcement of various shifts. So that will happen. And in terms of fare coverage, I don't have any expectation that fares will cover the operating costs. It doesn't happen with transit. It certainly doesn't happen with WMATA. And it doesn't happen with our buses. And I would go the opposite direction. I support free buses. If it can encourage transit, if it can encourage ridership, and have fewer cars on the road, eventually that will save money, and get people, get people out of their cars. Right now we have free buses for seniors and students. And so I don't have the same expectation that we're going to cover operating costs from fares.
Oh, thank you for that. That's helpful perspective. And then more outside of your district, but similar to, in transportation, the Maryland 97 Georgia Avenue, Wayne Avenue to Urbana
Yeah.
Drive bus lane pilot. Can you please talk about this pilot program and where it stands today? What involvement, if any, does your committee have in
Yeah,
influencing
so
the outcomes?
we don't. I mean, I know of it just from we get letters, and just because, you hear, I know about it, but we haven't had a briefing on it. I think that the initial review is that it's been successful, and so I think there's going to be they extended the pilot through the end of the year. They'll look to see how it's worked, with back to school, that kind of thing. And so they'll do a more thorough review of it, and I'm sure we'll be briefed at that point in time. And excuse me, it's a budgetary issue, right? So I'm assuming we will see it during budget.
No, that's helpful. And I see we're coming down to the wire here, 7 minutes. If there's any questions in the chat or anyone has questions, please raise your hand. So one question that maybe is more top of mind to me, because it's a recent development, is with the electrification. And so on the state level, I participated in one of the the ENT committee meetings where they talked about at the state, they're just seeing so much budget constraint when it comes to electrifying our public, buses, and even WMATA has stated that there's just not enough funding to continue the electrification of our buses. And so they're slowing that down for the indefinite future because they're just going to focus on, we need to have a clean diesel bus available for customers, timely for them to get to and from where they're going. Do you see any trickle down of that to the county level or to the MCPS level when it comes to further electrification of our buses and our fleet?
Yeah, so I think it's too soon to expect it to impact our plans. And as the school system does their thing, we do our thing. But we do, we do have a plan to replace diesel buses. I think we have a contract to do 100 buses over the next 3 years. And the issue with that is, there's such a time lag between when you order a bus and when you get the bus. And it's just a catch-22 in terms of it's a long delay. We have to sign a contract. Otherwise, we're never going to get to the front of the line. So that's just the way it is with these buses. But we are planning to increase the number of buses. Certainly not the entire fleet. Some of the issues will be, the whole range anxiety for buses. But the beauty of a lot of our routes is they're short routes. When we look at up by me, we have long routes, but down county they're short routes, and so it's ideal for an electric vehicle. We do have to have the infrastructure has to be in place. We talk about the grid all the time because we're looking at electrification of buildings. We're looking at a potential data center in the ag reserve, and so we do talk about the grid, and we will continue to monitor that. So I don't think we're going to change our stance, of course, but when budget comes up, our Department of Transportation might say the same thing in terms of, transitioning. But what that would mean is that we won't meet our agreed upon goals, climate goals. And so that's a difficult discussion to have. So that's kind of where we are. We are looking at hydrogen. We got a federal grant, and we have commissioned, I don't know, 10, 15 hydrogen buses. Of course, we don't have the buses yet, but we have commissioned them, and we have appropriated funds for them. So.
Yeah, that's great. And I'll give Fitz the last question. Before that, just I think as I've tried to follow the conversations with the diesel bus versus the electric bus, is it 2 times the cost of a diesel bus is for electric bus? And then I think the hydrogen bus costs even more than the electric bus. So the investment is definitely there, and there are pros and cons to whether it's environmental, sustainable, affordable, all of those things interplay. So yeah, it's definitely a complex conversation, but I'm here for it. I think it's great. Montgomery County is one of the few jurisdictions to be awarded the grant for the hydrogen buses. So definitely looking to see what we can make of that. And so our last question, I'll turn it over to you, Fitz, before we give Marilyn the final word.
So yeah, greetings, Councilmember Balcombe. And I recently saw an article that you wrote, I think a couple years back, about voter turnout in the Up County and voter participation. And I just essentially wanted to ask, how can we proliferate mechanisms to increase turnout in the Up County? Because unfortunately, it seems as if some of their agenda gets subverted, whether it's through that Lake Forest Mall closing down, and I heard it's turning to a senior citizen, a residential property, which I could be wrong, or the M83 to also that highway project also, which looks like it may or may not get bogged down. So what can we do to excite and energize that base in the Up County to get some of those things done?
Another question that if I had the answer to, I would win the day. So the title of the article is "The Up County Doesn't Vote and Nobody Cares," right? So the problem is that the system, the way the system works is just there's no one is motivated to change it, right? So when you look at a district rep, it doesn't matter how many people vote. You just have to get the most votes, right? So, and if you're an at-large member, you have to get the most votes countywide, so you go to where the votes are. So if you are a voter, particularly if you're a Super Dem voter, the 2 months, the 6 weeks before election, you are bombarded, and it's a reinforcement. It's a closed loop in that you think, get 10 mailers a day and people knock on your door and you think, oh my God, voting is so important. I need to vote. If you're not a primary voter, if you're not a Democratic primary voter, you might not get any mail. You might not ever have a person knock on your door. So there's no impetus to, there's no one is encouraging you to vote. And I've had this conversation, I'm a Democrat, so I'm focused on Democratic Party. I've had that discussion with the Democratic Party in the county. I've had the discussion with the Board of Elections. I've had the discussion with the League of Women Voters, right? There's always a limited amount of time and money, and I really think that the Board of Elections, and I don't know if I just said Board of Education. Sometimes I mix the two of them up. I think they do a great job of trying to get people registered, but it's the getting out the vote that really matters. And if you're not a voter, if it's really hard to change people's behavior. And for instance, and I haven't looked at the district numbers, but I think I just saw a report that 77% of voters in Montgomery County voted in the presidential election. Great. 40% vote in the gubernatorial primary. And in Up County, that's 27% of people vote in the gubernatorial primary. So what happens between that, the presidential general election and the gubernatorial primary, that there's the disconnect. And if you ask people if they vote, if you ask the general public if they vote, 77% will say yes, because in their mind, they vote once every 4 years, as opposed to twice in the presidential primary and during the gubernatorial, and then in the cities are even worse. The city elections are even worse. So one of the things that I'm doing is I'm just really trying to build a database of my community and getting people more engaged in the Up County. We don't have civic organizations. I'm trying to build them. I've tried from the other side of the fence to do that, and to limited success. But no, we don't have a civic voice. We don't have a culture of being civically engaged, and it's really difficult. We had and I know that I'm breaking my time I'll take responsibility for going over time. We had my first year, we had a transportation town hall, and it was great, and it was very well attended. And half the people at the Up County Transportation Town Hall lived down county, and they came to express their opinion about what we should do in the Up County about our transportation. And so when it came time for Q&A, we had people tell us where they lived before they asked their question. So even when we have a town hall that's focused on the Up County transportation, we have people from down county telling us, same thing with the M83 discussion. The majority of the people who are in favor live in Clarksburg. The majority of the people who are opposed live down county. There is this group in Montgomery Village, for the most part, does not, we have a Montgomery Village is opposed and Clarksburg is pro. But a lot of people who live in Kensington or Wheaton or Chevy Chase have opinions about this road. And it's disheartening.
Yeah. Yeah. No, thank you. No, thank you for that explanation. I truly appreciate it. I always saw it as, we may have somewhat of an oversaturation of representation in the Dow County, as you said, especially in the.
Well, that is because of the vote.
Yeah.
Lori Ann managed to get elected from Gaithersburg, and that's great. So.
Yeah, that's definitely an interesting discussion, how we can energize that up-county constituency so that their agendas essentially doesn't get subverted from the down-county progressive folks, et cetera.
Yeah, no, I agree. And definitely, I think that's something that I personally would love to help as a resident of Up County, to get our neighbors out to vote when there are elections and to be aware and engaged so that, the path to victory does pass through us in Up County. But thank you so much, Marilyn Balcombe, for joining us this evening. And great question, Fitz, about voting. I definitely want to give you the last word in terms of how can we, as a Taxpayers League, help amplify the work that you're doing, help you to be even more successful in your second half of your first term. How can we help you, reach the community?
Yeah, I think that it's just hearing your voice and weighing in. I mean, that's important. And, we do read every email we get. And we get hundreds, sometimes thousands of emails. But we, and of course, testify and be proactive if you see something that's coming, that you want to weigh in before it's a problem. And I always think that it's important to have these conversations before there's a problem. Gordy's at our table quite often, and we appreciate that. We do appreciate when people come and testify. So.
Awesome. Well, thank you again for your time this evening, and thank you everyone for joining the Taxpayers League meeting. And with that, have a good night.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Bye.